Karen called 911 on my ranch. She didn't know I was a federal agent with a plan. It's funny how things get twisted out here in rural Texas. Out on my 100-acre ranch just south of Abilene, the sun rises quiet and honest. The cows don't gossip, the land don't lie, and the wind tells you everything you need to know if you listen close enough. But apparently, the truth doesn't travel well when it has to pass through a woman like Karen Halbrook. I'm Miles Jefferson, retired U.S. Army Ranger, 3 tours overseas, and now a rancher just trying to live a peaceful life with my livestock. My Labrador Charlie, and my granddaughter Ellie, who I raise alone after we lost her parents. I don't ask for much, just space, respect, and to be left the hell alone. That all changed the morning I found Karen pacing at my fence line, filming my livestock like she was some animal rights savior crossed with the FBI. Her fake nails clicked furiously on her iPhone screen as she narrated lies into the camera. That one looks starved. This one has an infected leg. I think they're breeding illegally. I'm calling the HOA and the sheriff. There was just one problem. There is no HOA out here. Karen had moved in 2 months earlier into the abandoned property across the county road, a foreclosure she claimed she revitalized. Within days, she slapped laminated rules to every fence post. Quiet hours 9 p.m., 7 a.m. No livestock smells past 100 yards. And the most outrageous one, no flag flying unless approved by the chairwoman. That last one she put up after seeing Old Glory on my barn wall. That morning, I walked over to the fence and said, "Ma'am, you're trespassing with your camera, and you're trespassing with your words. I suggest you leave." She smirked, chewing gum like she owned the sun. "You're on watch, cowboy. Your land isn't immune to regulation. You're not in Afghanistan anymore." She wasn't the first to underestimate me. She wouldn't be the last. What I didn't know was that Karen wasn't just bluffing with fake HOA threats. She had plans dangerous, delusional, and backed by something worse than power. She had connections. And one day later, a black SUV with government decals rolled up to my gate. That's when all hell broke loose. They say if you stand still in Texas long enough, someone will come by trying to tell you how to live. But I never imagined someone like Karen Halbrook would bring the full force of her delusions to my doorstep in a black SUV with a Homeland Security sticker on it. It was the next morning. Ellie was brushing her pony, Sugar, when I spotted the vehicle kicking up dust on the gravel road. I didn't recognize the man who stepped out: khakis, cheap sunglasses, clipboard. He introduced himself as Special Agent Bowman from a federal rural compliance task force. Now I've been around long enough to smell bull the moment it steps out of a truck. Federal rural compliance, I asked. Since when is that part of DHS? We've received an anonymous tip about animal neglect, unregistered livestock, and possible narcotics activity on the premises, he replied, flipping through what looked like printouts of satellite photos clearly taken by drone. My drone, the one Karen had buzzed over my ranch days earlier. "You got a warrant." "Agent," he hesitated. That was all I needed. I handed him a card from my wallet, a special gold-embossed one that doesn't just carry my retired ranger credentials, but also notes my post-military federal clearance. I worked contract counterintelligence for years after I got home. That clearance didn't vanish just because I traded a rifle for a shovel. His face changed. Fast. "Sir," he stammered, "I wasn't told about your background." "Of course not, because this isn't about animals or drugs. It's about a woman across the road who thinks she can invent laws." He left, quickly, but the real damage had already begun. That night, I walked Ellie back inside after feeding the animals, only to find the barn door slightly ajar. The inside reeked of gasoline. A half-burned rag sat near a hay bale. If I hadn't walked in when I did, we'd have lost the whole thing. Karen didn't just want me shut down. She wanted me destroyed. I called the sheriff, but they didn't exactly rush. Karen had been cozying up to the local homeowners nearby, spreading her story of the unstable veteran, harboring God knows what on his property. Suddenly, I was the villain, and she was the hero of her own imaginary war. By the end of the week, 3 more trucks came claiming to be from the county water board, zoning office, in state agriculture. All fake. Not a badge among them checked out. What I had on my hands wasn't just harassment, it was a coordinated fake enforcement campaign. And Karen was orchestrating all of it under the guise of a made-up HOA she claimed gave her authority. But if she thought she could outmaneuver me on legal turf, she hadn't read my file or met my friends. I called in a few favors, not the kind that show up in suits and ties, the kind that show up in satellite trucks and forensic labs. A buddy of mine from Fort Bragg, now with Homeland himself, took one look at the drone footage Karen had sent through her compliance channels and flagged it. The metadata was faked, geolocation spoofed, and some of the images had been AI enhanced to show animal wounds that didn't exist. That's when things really shifted. You see, impersonating federal officers, faking government documentation, tampering with digital evidence to frame a veteran. That doesn't just violate one law, it violates dozens. I documented everything, every visit, every phone call, every strange car. I rigged up trail cams across my property, concealed in the brush and in old feed bins. And what I caught next would bring Karen's little empire crumbling down. One night at 3:17 a.m., my camera caught her husband, Derek Halbrook, a failed realtor and part-time tow truck operator, sneaking into my pasture with bolt cutters and a metal stake. He drove it into the ground and tied old wire to it, trying to make it look like my livestock were being kept in unsafe conditions. But the real kicker, he was wearing a county inspector badge. Problem is, the county hadn't hired a new inspector in 6 years. That video, along with Karen's own voice in recordings from the past few weeks, threatening neighbors who didn't follow her made-up bylaws, became the fuel I needed to light the first spark. I didn't report it to local police. I sent it to the state attorney general's office, because Karen's games weren't just annoying anymore. They were criminal, and justice was hungry. They say a man alone is a whisper, but a town united is thunder. And after weeks of silence, the thunder finally started to roll. I knew I wasn't the only one Karen had targeted. That kind of obsession doesn't limit itself to one pasture. But when you live far apart like we do out here, 10, 20, even 30 acres between homes, it's easy for folks to suffer quietly, thinking they're the only ones. That's what Karen counted on: isolation, fear, and the shame that comes with being accused of something false. But I had proof now, and I wasn't just going to burn it in the courts, I was going to share it. That Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to the local VFW post in town. I wore my old Army jacket, not to show off, but because I knew it would open doors. Sure enough, by the time I ordered a cup of burnt coffee at the bar, 3 folks I hadn't seen in a year sat down beside me. "Karen giving you trouble too?" asked Pete McClellan, a Vietnam vet who ran goats on 25 acres past the ridge. I nodded. She tried to burn my barn down. The table went dead silent. Then Sharon McKinney, widow, runs a dog rescue, said, "She called the county on me twice, claimed I was running an illegal kennel, nearly got me fined 20 grand. I had a drone hovering outside my bathroom window last month," Pete added grimly. And just like that, the floodgates opened, one after another. Stories came out: Karen threatening to fine neighbors, posing as an HOA official, making compliance visits with her husband wearing fake inspector badges. She had compiled a list of violators in the neighborhood and tried to extort compliance under the banner of the Silver Pines Ranch Residential Council, a name she had literally printed off a fake website template. And here's the worst part: she had recruited people. 2 of the newer families in the area had been tricked into believing the HOA was real. Karen offered them discounts on dues if they helped her enforce the rules, mostly spying and reporting. They'd put up little cameras disguised as bird feeders, and even handed out notices in Karen's name. People were scared, isolated, but I wasn't scared anymore. That night, I hosted a barbecue on my property, really just a meeting in disguise. Nearly a dozen neighbors showed up, some with baked beans, others with stories to share, and documents to show. And we started connecting the dots. Karen had filed 12 false reports to the sheriff in less than 6 months under 6 different aliases. She forged notary stamps. She used her husband's towing business to mark vehicles as abandoned and tried to impound them, including Pete's tractor, which she claimed violated HOA noise code. And most of all, she used her Facebook page protecting Silver Pines to smear anyone who stood up to her. Photos of my barn, my granddaughter, even my military service records were posted without consent, captioned with lies and fear-mongering. But what Karen didn't realize was that people had had enough. We formed a coalition not just of neighbors, but of veterans, farmers, teachers, and retirees, folks with roots in this land going back generations. We named ourselves the Liberty Ranch Council, and unlike her, we didn't make it up. We pooled resources, hired a real attorney, one who'd worked HOA fraud cases across Texas, and submitted a class action complaint to the state attorney general. But that wasn't all. Remember my buddy at Homeland? He fast-tracked our digital evidence to the cybersecurity division. Within a week, they traced Karen's drone footage, falsified email chains, and fake badges back to a hard drive in her garage which had been used to edit the footage that nearly got me arrested. They issued a federal search warrant under the Digital Harassment and Impersonation Act. I wasn't there when they raided her home, but I saw the black SUVs coming down the road, and I saw her standing at her fence in her pink robe, arms crossed, barking at agents as they seized boxes of files, laptops, and yes, a filing cabinet labeled HOA violations. Lawsuits, evidence, evidence. All right, of her own crimes. Still, I knew Karen wasn't the kind to go down quietly. And I was right. She made one last desperate move. A move that would not only violate the law, it would violate every ounce of decency left in her. Karen Halbrook was many things petty, controlling, delusional, but she wasn't stupid. When the federal raid hit her property and the news started to leak into town, she knew her time was running out. Most people might have lawyered up, laid low, or fled. Not Karen. She doubled down. That very night, while most folks assumed she was busy fending off government agents, she was already planning her final move, the one she thought would win her back control over the neighborhood. The narrative and the fake HOA she built from lies. It was Ellie who first spotted the change. "Grandpa," she said, tugging my sleeve as I fixed the back pasture fence, "why is there a sign on the road saying emergency community meeting tonight?" I wiped sweat from my brow and walked up to the road. Sure enough, nailed into a utility pole was a fresh wooden sign, painted white with red lettering, "Emergency Silver Pines Show Meeting Tonight to Town Chapel, 7 p.m. All residents required." Required by what law? The town chapel wasn't even in our district. "She's going public," I muttered, trying to spin the story before the real charges drop. We went, not because we were obligated, but because we knew it was time to face her in the open. When we arrived, the place was packed. At least 50 neighbors filled the pews, fanning themselves with paper, murmuring about the raid. At the front, Karen stood tall behind the pulpit like she was a senator under siege. Her blonde hair was styled into a helmet, and her pink pantsuit glared under the overhead lights. "Good evening, residents of Silver Pines," she said in a voice as sweet and sharp as a blade. "You may have heard dangerous rumors, circulating rumors, orchestrated by a known extremist with military background who has admitted to stockpiling weapons, running an unlicensed animal facility, and threatening the safety of this neighborhood." Gasps rippled through the room. She was talking about me. "I have here," she continued, holding up a manila folder, "a sworn affidavit, signed by a real federal officer, confirming that my oversight actions fall within the jurisdiction of rural protective governance initiatives under the Emergency Neighborhood Authority Act. A law that doesn't exist, but the room didn't know that yet. Furthermore," she said, voice rising, "the man known as Miles Jefferson has violated multiple codes of conduct, endangered minors." I stood up. "I served 30 years in defense of this country, and now I stand here defending my home," I said loud and clear. "And the only threat to this community, the only predator we've seen in the last 6 months is you, Karen." Whispers turned to murmurs. I stepped into the aisle, holding up a folder of my own. "This," I said, "is a real report from the Texas Attorney General's office. detailing at least 21 criminal violations, including impersonating federal agents, falsifying public documents, drone harassment, and digital forgery. I handed it to the deacon standing nearby, who started reading it aloud. One by one, people began to turn on Karen. I saw heads shake, jaws drop. I saw the first cracks in her composure. Then the twist dropped, not from me, but from the back of the room. A voice shouted, "Tell them about the kids." Karen. All eyes turned. It was Angela Rojas, a single mother whose teenage sons worked part-time for Karen, trimming lawns and running errands. Her hands shook as she pulled out a small USB drive. She made my boys download fake property violation notices. Said it was practice paperwork for her HOA. I didn't know until they showed me screenshots. She had them make up complaints, including ones about you, Mr. Jefferson. She made children help her frame you. That broke the room. Someone yelled. She called CPS on me. Another. She told my daughter she'd have our dog taken. Karen's voice faltered. These are unsubstantiated allegations. No, I said, stepping forward. They're facts. And here's one more. Homeland Security traced your drone metadata back to a burner server, one set up using your husband's towing company address. A door opened. Two uniformed officers entered. Real ones. Sheriff Hank Tolbert, gruff and slow-talking, nodded toward the pulpit. Karen Halbrook, we have a warrant for your arrest for impersonation of a public official, obstruction of justice, and child endangerment. She shrieked. Of course, said it was political, that I had set her up, but nobody listened anymore. She was dragged out screaming, mascara streaking like tire marks down her cheeks. The meeting ended in silence, but outside something new had begun. It's strange how quiet a place can feel after a storm. The week after Karen Halbrook's arrest, you could hear the wind in the mesquite again. No more fake violation notices flapping on mailboxes. No more drones buzzing low like wasps near the barn. No more paranoid looks exchanged at the feed store or the chapel steps. Just peace. But peace doesn't come automatically. You've got to rebuild it, and that's what we did. The first step was dismantling the damage. We met again, this time not in secret or under duress, but at the town's open-air pavilion. Kids ran barefoot between the picnic tables. A few local bands played old country tunes. Someone passed around fresh peach cobbler and brisket that would make you weep. It was a real Texas kind of justice, calm, collective, and covered in barbecue sauce. There, the Liberty Ranch Council officially filed for nonprofit neighborhood status, no fake bylaws, no dues, no board with God complexes. Just a simple mission: protect the rights of independent landowners, defend veterans, and rebuild trust between neighbors. Pete got voted in as chair. He tried to turn it down, but we knew better. Ellie was named junior coordinator, mostly because she kept everyone honest and organized better than half the adults. As for me, they gave me a title I never expected: honorary steward of Silver Pines. It sounds fancy, but to me it just meant people had finally stopped seeing me as the grumpy old guy with the military haircut and started seeing me as what I really was, one of them. Meanwhile, Karen. She was denied bail. Turns out impersonating federal officers, falsifying digital evidence, and forcing minors into coercive digital fraud schemes doesn't sit well with a Texas jury, especially one with veterans, ranchers, and school teachers in it. Her husband Derek caved fast and flipped on her, pleaded out, testified, and gave up the entire operation. The prosecutors called it the most elaborate HOA fraud scheme in state history. Her assets were frozen. The fake HOA website was taken down. Every complaint, every bogus fine, every image she doctored, all entered into evidence. The cherry on top: Homeland Security formally exonerated me in writing. Not that they ever believed Karen's nonsense, but they wanted to make it very clear where they stood. I stood on my porch the day the sun finally dipped behind the western ridge, casting golden light across the pasture. Ellie leaned against the railing next to me. She's gone. Huh, she asked. Yep. You think people will forget? No, I said, and they shouldn't. Not because we want revenge, but because remembering is how we make sure it doesn't happen again. She nodded, wise beyond her years. Then, she grinned. Can we put the new sign up now? I laughed. Yeah, let's do it. We walked down the gravel driveway, past the newly painted gate, and hammered a fresh wooden sign into the earth. This land is free. No HOA. No trespassing. No fear. The wind blew gently through the trees. Somewhere out back, Sugar the pony nickered, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder. Stories like this one aren't just fiction, they reflect real power struggles that happen in neighborhoods across the country when authority is faked or used to bully others. We all lose something. Have you ever witnessed abuse of power in your community? Do you believe HOAs help or hurt? Share your thoughts below. Discuss what justice looks like and how we, as neighbors, can stand together when it's under threat. Because when good people speak up, bad actors fall silent.